My name is Dan Harris. I'm not Chabad of Camarillo, but I'm going to be introducing you to right now the man, two of the men who are actually representing Chabad of Camarillo. We're all here this evening, thank God, at the Boys and Girls Club of Camarillo. Rabbi Aryeh Lang, who's I'll say the lead rabbi. I don't know if that exists as a title, but I'll call my rabbi Aryeh Lang, who's just to my left, is the lead rabbi of Chabad of Camarillo, just next to the Bank of America building on Santa Rosa Road. And the gentleman who's scurrying madly behind is also my dear friend, Rabbi Yosef Machner. We're so pleased to have you here with us this evening. I want to thank you. And also, you should thank yourselves and give yourselves a quick little round of applause just for being here tonight. Without further ado, I'll pass the mic. I'll pass the mic over to Rabbi Aryeh Lang.
Thank you very much, Dan. Thank you for the warm introduction. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I'd like to begin by thanking our hosts here at the Camarillo Boys and Girls Club. This is a great place. It's a lot of construction going on here, and it's a great community spot in Camarillo. So Roberto Martinez is here, who was here before, the CEO of the Boys and Girls Club, and I want to thank him and his staff for making this place available for this evening. Thank you, Boys and Girls Club. Let's give them a round of applause. I'd also like to recognize some of our officials here today, and we have several of the council members here. So we have Council Member Kevin Kilby, his daughter, Council Member Tony, and then his wife Kathy Trempoli, and Council Member, I don't know if she's here, Martitia Martinez Bravo. Thank you very much. I understand she's also part of the ADL.
Yes.
Wow, that's special. Thank you. Nice to meet you. Also, I want to recognize our commanding officer here in the Camarillo Police Department, where we're closely together, Commander Eric Tennyson. Here with his two boys, and with, I would say, maybe 10 or so of our law enforcement that came with their families because they wanted to hear it. And that tells you a lot. And I want to tell you, he has a big heart. We work very close together in our drug prevention program called Saving Lives Camarillo. And I really must say about this community that as a community, I feel like we all work together and everyone is appreciated for who, at least I've seen. My experience, 20 years in Camarillo, has been very welcoming. I don't kind of look like everyone else around here, but everybody was always so welcoming to the Jewish community that I have seen grow over the last 20 years. So that tells you a lot about the heart and the leadership of our community. So thank you. I want to recognize a very special person who I work closely together, and she is the executive director of the Jewish Federation of Ventura County, who's co-sponsoring this event, Sherry Dukovsky, please. And that's great. Thank you, Sherry. Always ready to do something good for the community, and they send thousands of kids from the schools, 8th grade, to the Simon Wiesenthal Center. It's up to 100,000. And that is a really beautiful, remarkable thing. And let's give that a round of applause. Or Yasher Koach, I'll say it in Hebrew, which means keep it up. And when I said we were doing this, Sherry was all over it right away. Today, it's kind of a weird day to be celebrating, to be having this day. 420, does anyone know what 420 is? What? Hey, his name be erased, Hitler's birthday today. Can you imagine?
Yes.
out of all days. But actually, I find that interesting. I didn't know that, because I don't really hold tabs on those types of things. It doesn't really matter to me. But I actually feel that it's appropriate. Because imagine, and this is so people could see on the Zoom, imagine the fact that he could see that we're gathered here in Mass because we represent kindness and light and love as much as he represented hate and darkness. And to me, I have a picture of a man who was donning the phylactery, the tefillin. And what that is, the two boxes that Jewish men over bar mitzvah, 13, wear. And he's standing there with Nazis right behind him. And I was told that right when he finished praying, they killed him. And here, we just did that prayer with Joseph Alexander in a free country, in a place that has tolerance, that allows all people to practice. That's the biggest victory right there that you could possibly imagine, is being able to celebrate our tradition and culture. So it's apropos, and I want to say that that's our victory right here. So thank you. We're going to go straight to welcoming our speaker. The first time I actually met him was at a Jewish wedding in Thousand Oaks. A young girl, she was 18, growing up in Camarillo, California, getting married, a nice, beautiful Jewish wedding, and there it was, someone said, I have to introduce you to someone. It was a beautiful outdoor wedding, and there was Joseph Alexander and Riva, and we prayed together right at that moment. I said, I need to bring you to Camarillo to speak one day. And it happened. It took a little while, but it did happen. So I'm very grateful. I want to share one thing, because I think this is the theme that I want to bring out. And we're going to hear the story. That's going to be the key. But I want to share one thing. In 1962, the UJA, the United Jewish Appeal, was sending members. It was March 4th, 1962, and they were heading to Auschwitz. This week, how many people visited Auschwitz this week? Many, many thousands. The March of the Living and so on visited Auschwitz this week. I visited. And if you go to the Reagan Library, right now there's an exhibit, unbelievable exhibit, that I recommend everyone go to see. And it says, what does it say? Not too long ago, not so far away. It's chilling when you read that. Driving down the 101, when I see that big board, it's just very chilling. But they had a lot of questions, these students. What are we supposed to make of going to Auschwitz? What do we do? And Lubavitcher Rebbe, leader of World Jewry, responded. He said Hitler really wanted to wasn't about just killing the Jews. He wanted to destroy Judaism, the spirit. And he told these students, he said it very clearly, you want to defeat him, the only way to defeat him is to be proud of who you are. The more openly you can be proud of your Jewish heritage, the more you could walk down the street and someone can see you and say, that's a proud Jew. And you've defeated Hitler. So I challenge you, the Rebbe told them, to stand strong and to help other people who've assimilated. Challenge them to grow in their Jewish observance. And if there's one thing that governs Chabad, I think it's that. The Rebbe sent out 5,000 emissaries like myself, Rabbi Yosef, we're two couples here in Camarillo, around 100 different countries. And we search out every Jew in love as they were once searched out with hate. And that was the ultimate message, I think. We want to win this war. Well, you see how many people are growing up proud of their tradition. And I believe that the Gentiles here, doing mitzvahs and doing good deed and supporting the Jewish community and being here is another victory for the people that represent love and good deeds, and light will always overcome darkness. To me, Mr. Joseph Alexander represents the menorah, that candle that we light at Constitution Park every year. To those that come for the last about 20 years, we light a big menorah, and many of the city officials have been there. It's the eternal flame of the Jewish people that will never be destroyed, and Mr. Alexander represents that so beautifully, standing here at 100 years old. So I'd like, Dan has a little introduction to follow up, to welcome our special speaker here, as Dan has offered to be the MC tonight. But we're going to ask everyone later in the program to do one more good deed today, because I think that's, to me, the outcome of any evening today. It's not just hearing the story. So how am I going to make the world a better place today? Especially the young people here. I'm so happy to see some young people here that took up their day. They could be playing baseball, but they're going to hear this story and they're going to learn how intolerance of other people could lead to and how we could rectify that in our life. Thank you.
With your indulgence, I'll also sit, just to make sure that this camera's working fine. Just a couple of minutes, I promise. First of all, again, good evening, everyone, and thanks to Rabbi Wang and Rabbi Yosef for setting this up and giving us an opportunity to be a part of this journey and move it forward. I heard yesterday a man by the name of Rabbi Shlomo Farhi describe the difference between remembering and not forgetting. Not forgetting is by itself a statement. It's a promise to preserve something. Its creative power is latent. Remembering, on the other hand, nurtures that promise and makes it into something. Let's call taking a series of past events and then making them into something new, something vital, something present here today, indeed something that is transformative. Born in Poland, Mr. Alexander was raised by a loving father and a loving mother, 3 sisters and 2 brothers. At the age of 16, the Nazis forced Mr. Alexander and his family to move into a ghetto. Mr. Alexander survived the Warsaw Ghetto thereafter, and 12 concentration camps during a 5-year span. At Auschwitz, Joseph Mengele, Machshema, may his name be blotted, selected Mr. Alexander to line up with the sick people on the left side. Mr. Alexander ran to the right side to line up where the strong people were. Mr. Alexander literally slaved on a starvation diet those next 5 years. He survived typhus. He survived human cruelty of the worst kind. He survived wickedness. He survived what even Hannah Arendt, famous historian, described as the banality of evil. Those debates are ongoing, by the way. But this we know, winter of 1944, 1945, at 21 years old, the American Army liberated Mr. Alexander, I believe, in the middle of a death march at the end of the war. So World War II ends, and a few days are spent in a German DP camp, displaced persons camp, and Mr. Alexander returned to Poland, only to discover that his entire immediate family perished. This evening we're here, and we are privileged to hear from Mr. Alexander directly, because he for lots of reasons, but this I believe to be true. He, by being here with us this evening, is transforming, not forgetting, into active acts of remembrance. He is, I know, a hero. He is, to me, an inspiration. So we are honored that he decided to share his story with us this evening at the Boys and Girls Club of Camarillo. Ladies and gentlemen, won't you please join me in welcoming Mr. Alexander to this stage.
Has a program. Mr. Alexander's is going to start. We want to read a Psalm 121. Everyone can read it along with him. King David.
A song for a son. I shall raise my eyes to the mountains, from where will my help come. My help is from the Lord, the maker and the heavens and earth. He will not allow you to foot to fall. Your guardian will not slumber. Behold, the guardians of Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is your guardian. The Lord is your shadow. He is by your right hand. By day the sun will not smile you, nor will the moon at night. The Lord will guard you from all evil. He will guard your soul. The Lord will guard you going out and your coming in from now and the eternity. Well, my name is Joseph Alexander. I'm a Holocaust survivor from Poland, and I've survived 12 camps. I come from a small town in Poland, and I had a family. I had my parents, father and mother, 3 sisters, and 2 brothers, and I'm the only survivor. My father was in business, and we had a very good life until 1939, when the Germans came into Poland. They divided Poland in 2 parts. One was annexed to the Third Reich. The second part was Poland under German occupation. We lived on the part where it was annexed to the Third Reich. And most of you, I guess, know that in Europe, every town has a town square. We lived in the town square, and we are the second house in one corner of the square. And the third house was an uncle of mine. After a few weeks, they came to town and went around after the uncle, around the square, and told the people they have 10 minutes to get their possessions and get out in the middle of the square, and they took them away. For some reason I'll never know why they left those 3 houses where we were the second house. Then rumors started right away that they're going to come back 3 days later and take the rest of us. So my father had 3 sisters living about 25 kilometers before Warsaw. And that was the second part of Poland, where that was second Poland. So my dad said, we're not going to wait for them to come and give us 10 minutes. So he got out and rented, we had deep wagons in Europe, horse-drawn wagon, but was 6 to 8 feet deep, and packed up most of the stuff from the store, and he put a few pieces of bedding on top, a couple pieces of furniture, because from our part to the other part, he had to go through a border. So my parents and 1 sister and brother, they left. So when they left, I remained with 2 older sisters, and we were loading up a second wagon. In the meantime, we had the Polish people from around town coming into town to buy anything they can get. So I sold a man a bicycle and a boat of shirt material. On the way home, he stopped, went through the police station, he got stopped, asked him where did he get that material. He said, I bought it. Then show me a receipt. He said, I don't have a receipt. Then go bring the person who sold it to you. So he came back to me and said, you have to come with me to the police station. If not, they're going to come here. So I went with him and he asked me, did you sell him that? I said, yes. Why didn't you give him a receipt? I said, we in Poland, we didn't give a receipt. So he took the boat material, smacked the guy, go, and let me go. I went back, and my sisters waited for me, and we were ready. We took off with the wagon, and came to a little town named Bologna. So one weekend I got home, and I said, I'm not going back. So Monday morning, the police came to look for me, and my dad said, he's not here, he's supposed to be in the camp. So I stayed away from home for a while. I stayed with my friends, my cousins. And that was the time when they were started to build the wall in Warsaw, where the Warsaw Ghetto was going to be. After they got through building the wall in Warsaw, they came out and ordered all the Jews who lived within 50, 60 kilometers in the surrounding area of Warsaw had to move into the ghetto. So we moved into the ghetto. The life in the ghetto, you can't even imagine how terrible it was. Very bad, because the section they picked out, where they put the wall in, was a very small section, and they put over 400,000 people in. So people were dying every day. You saw people, dead people on the streets, on the sidewalks, everywhere. It was very bad. I lived in the ghetto for 5 months, and we found out that back home, since we left, nothing had changed. Everything remained the same. So my parents decided for an older sister and a younger brother and I, we should go back home. So to get home, we have to get out of the ghetto. So we paid off the guards at the gate, and we got out. We got out, so my sister and brother said they will take one street, and I'll take another street, and we'll meet on the outskirts of town. I walked for about 2 blocks, and I had a Polish teenager comes over and said, give me some money, I'm going to report you. So I figured I gave him some money, I got rid of him, and I kept walking. But he got on the streetcar, I rode the streetcar for a few blocks, and he comes over again, give me some more money. So this time I gave him some more money, but I changed the street and I lost him. So I walked to the outskirts of town, I met my sister and brother, and we went home. So we came back, as I said, nothing has changed since we left. But I was free for 3 days. After being there 3 days, they came out and ordered all the Jewish men from 16 to 60, report to the schoolhouse. So I reported to the schoolhouse, and off I went to the camp. The first camp I went to was actually camps we had to a camp, but there were a lot of camps in the city of Poznan. There were camps in the city and around the city. So I went to first camp, we were building a dam. We were cutting down hills, and we had little electric cars, you fill them up, and you take them another place and they dump them. So the work we were doing was very hard work, because we had to use picks to loosen up the ground before you could fill up those little cars. And the food you were getting was a piece of bread like this in the morning, and a cup of coffee. You went to work. You came back from work, you got a soup. It was most of the time from the peels from potatoes or spinach. The work you're doing with this food, you couldn't survive. The only way you could survive, we worked with civilians. And if you managed to get a little extra food, that's the only way you could survive. So every morning, this camp I was, every morning they took out dead people. There were hardly any people left in the camp. And there were some other camps around it, like I told you, around the area. The same thing happened at other camps. So I kept moving. So I moved the second camp, I moved to into the city, and I was laying cobblestones on the streets. That lasted a short time. I was moved to another camp. We were building sewers, putting the cement rails in underground. After that, I went to another camp. I was a roofer, doing roofs. That lasted, all these camps didn't last too long, only short times. Then I was moved to a camp in the city. We were building an airport. I was laying railroad tracks. After being in 7 camps, a train arrived, and it wasn't a passenger train. No, it was a cattle car train where they put 40, 50 people to one boxcar. And the destination we were going takes maybe 5, 6 hours at the most. We were riding around for 3 days. No food, no water, no facilities. So by the time we arrived, was Auschwitz. So we came to Auschwitz, they opened the doors of the train. 30–40% of people were dead on the train already. Whoever could walk, you walked out, you lined up in rows of 5, and you met Dr. Joseph Mengele. Dr. Mengele was called the Doctor of Death. He selected people for human experiment or for the gas chamber. So Dr. Mengele said that is 6 kilometers to walk to the camp. He's going to select people to go to the left. People on the left are going to be taken on trucks. So he went through and he picked out sick people, old people, young kids, and I was a little guy. So it picked me out too to go to the left. If I would come from home, I wouldn't know the difference. But I was already in 7 camps, and most of the camps where I have to go to work, I try to get in with the biggest, strongest man. Which a little guy I couldn't get away, which I did get away with a lot of things, because the big men carried my load. So in here I look around these people, I said, that's not the kind of people I like to be with. My luck was, it was after midnight. Would have been daytime, I don't think I could have done it. If Dr. Mengele moved a little further down, I ran back to the other side. If I didn't run back to the other side, I wouldn't be here talking to you tonight. Because the people on the left were taken on trucks and straight to the gas chamber. So I ran back to the other side, and I walked to the Auschwitz, to the camp. I got a shower, and I came out of the shower, and I got a tattoo. you got a number, 142584. And from that moment on, you had no name anymore. That was your name. I got a tattoo, and then there's Auschwitz too, called Birkenau. So I walked over, but it's about 3 kilometers apart. I walked to Birkenau. I was in Birkenau for about 5 months. I told Dr. Mengele 2 more times in Birkenau, but he was far away, it was daytime, and he was far away from where I was. I got through. But alive in Birkenau, I saw people run into the electric fence to get electrocuted. I saw people being beaten to death because they gave up. They couldn't take it anymore. So I was in Birkenau for about 5 months, and that was the time on April 1943, the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising was. After the Ghetto Uprising, they said they need a big transport, but they didn't want to take any people from Poland. They only wanted people from Hungary, Greece, Italy. And in the end, they were short about 300 people. So they said, now we'll take some people from Poland. So I report, and I'm going back to the Warsaw Ghetto for the second time. So we came back to the Warsaw Ghetto. There was not one house was left. All the houses were burned up. Only remaining walls. That's all it was there. And there was no camp. They gave us some prefab. We had to put together our own camp. And there was no facility, no showers, anything. So in the meantime, our job was take those walls down brick by brick and clean them up and put them up in stacks about 8 to 10 feet high. In the meantime, the typhus broke out. Anybody I knew who went to the hospital, I never knew anybody who came out of the hospital. Typhus is when you get very high fever. I got some of the high fever, but I didn't go to the hospital because I had a couple, we call it a couple, like a foreman. Was a middle-aged German man, but he was also a prisoner. So he didn't care if we worked, he didn't work. When I got that high fever, I was sitting behind those stacks of bricks like this for about 3 days until I got over it, and then I went back to work. After I went back to work, a short time after that, the Polish underground attacked our camp. They were trying to free us. So they were fighting all night, but were unsuccessful. So the next morning, they took us out, closed the camp, and we had to jog to get out of the city. They were afraid that the underground may attack us in the city. So we jogged to get out, and we got out, they put us up on a big field where the farmers graze their cows, and the ground is very moist. So down on the field, whatever means you had, a knife, a spoon, anything, you could dig up some mud. And you took the bottom of your shirt, squeezed the mud to get it into water. So we got it into water, and now we marched. We marched to come to a city, there was a river. So they let us go to the river to get some water. 2 of our people went a little further into the river. They thought maybe they want to escape, get out. They got shot, they got killed right in the river. So we had some water and we were walking. Then we come to the next town, was the same river. So they said now 100 people at a time can go to the river to get some water. So when we got some water, and that day was a very heavy rain was coming down. You walking, you couldn't even walk, you were sopping wet, you could hardly walk. Until we arrived at the railroad station, the same train arrived, and we got on the train, and this time we were 3.5 days on the train with no food, no water, nothing. And we went to Germany. We went to Germany to a camp named Dachau. Dachau was the first camp Hitler built in 1933 for political prisoners. Then he turned it into a concentration camp with the guest chamber. So I came to Dachau. So they organized 12 camps within the 50, 60 kilometers around Dachau, all by noon from 1 to 12. And then I was sent to camp number 1, and I was working for a farmer digging potatoes. We were digging potatoes, that lasted about 3 weeks. That wasn't too bad there because we made a fire and one of us was baking potatoes, so everybody got some baked potatoes. But that lasted about 3 weeks. Then I was sent to a camp 50 kilometers from Dachau to a city of Landsberg on Lech. And that was camp number 7. Camp number 7 was a small camp with only about 150 people, but that was the only camp I was where women were in the same camp, but they blocked off by wire fence, one corner of the camp, and we went to work together. But we came, camp number 7, we were a small group, we were in the camps already over 4 years. So we had the privilege of getting the better jobs. So my friends had worked in the kitchen. 3 of my friends were the police in the camp, and a couple, one was a carpenter, one was a metalsmith. And I got a group of 10. We were 5 girls and 5 boys, and we were working in the kitchen outside the camp and for the German guards. So two German men in charge of the kitchen, but they were very good to me. Every day I was going back to the camp, I took some food back, my friend, and we always had soup left over, so we had some big milk cans. I took a milk can and put it into a milk can, and the next morning people were going to work. They had to pass by our kitchen, so I stopped them and I gave them some food. A couple of times the officer in charge of the guards complained that I'm holding up the people who are going to work. But my people told me, don't worry about it, let them talk, do what you're doing. And that lasted about 5 or 6 weeks, actually until about April 28th, all the 12 camps had to go back to Dachau. So I went back to Dachau, we stayed overnight, and the next morning, what they called, we went on a death march. They're supposed to take us into the mountain, there's a ski resort in Germany named Garmisch. And that's where they're supposed to kill us, in the mountain. But we walked about 2 days, and we knew we were not going to be walking too far, because we could hear the fighting, so we knew the American troops are not far behind us. So I walked for 2 days and crossed a little bridge. That little bridge was blown up. So half of our group was on one side of the bridge, one half on the other side. I was on our side, where we were in a village named Königsdorf, and there was a little forest in the village. So they took us into the forest, and they asked for the volunteers to take the sick people into the village and put them into the farmers, to the barn, and told the volunteers to come back. One of the volunteers was a friend of mine, and on the way back they found a dead horse in the snow, so they cut off some pieces from the horse, and a friend of mine came back with a piece of meat and he said, do something. And that was a friend of mine, his name was Joe Buddha. You see this one here. So he came back with the meat and gave me some. I made a fire and I was barbecuing. And that was the best meal we had in a long time. During the night, the guard disappeared. The next morning, the German police came and they took us to the village, and they disappeared. So it was in the morning, between 8 and 9 o'clock. We're just walking around in the village and see what's going to happen next. So we walked around till about between 12 and 1 o'clock. An American tank moved in and we were liberated. And behind the tank were the American troops. So they tried to block off the village, not to let anybody out. But we were a group, we were 9 of us. We didn't want to get blocked in. We were in the camps over 5 years already. We didn't want to get, so we broke through and we walked for about 1 or 2 kilometers. There was a bakery. So we got into the bakery and everybody got a bread. Had a bread, you were okay. We started walking and we come to a city named Batel. It's about 40 kilometers from Munich. And we see 3 American soldiers, but they were Czechoslovakian descent. They were walking, they were trying to walk, they couldn't walk, they were holding on to each other. They were so drunk that they couldn't even walk. But the clothes we were wearing, they said, are you Polish? I told them yes. So I said, come on. And they took us into an underground bunker. It was a warehouse, you couldn't see the end of it. So the first thing, we changed clothes, and everybody took a backpack and put some food in. There were a big row of bicycles chained up, they broke the chain, and everybody got a bicycle. Now we have to find a place to stay. When the American troops came into that village, they brought all the people to that city. It used to be a German Air Force base. They made a DP camp, a displaced person camp. But we didn't want to go to a camp. So we tried to get out of the city. We couldn't get out. It was after 6 o'clock, and 6 o'clock was curfew. So we hopped over about 3 or 4 fences, and we came to a German inn. It was taken over by the American troop. And in back of the inn was an empty house, so we took over the house. So we stayed in the house about 10 days. Then they came out and ordered anybody who lives outside the camp has to move into the camp. So we moved into the camp, and you were taken back to a DP camp in Munich. It was a big DP camp, but you were free. You could live at the camp, or you can go any place you want. So I lived at camp in Munich for 3 days, and then a few friends of mine we were in camp number 7 in Landsberg, decided to go back to Landsberg. And in Landsberg was a lot of DP camps, but in Landsberg was one of the largest DP camps. But we didn't go to live at the camp. We went to the camp to register. They gave me a room. I stayed overnight. And the next morning, I moved out about 7 kilometers from town to a farm, and I lived in a farmhouse. The reason we went to register at the camp, because in case any of your family survived. So everybody went through all the camps to check the list. So I lived in the farmhouse about 6 weeks, and I decided to go back to Poland, go back to my home house to see if any of my family survived. But when I got out of the Warsaw Ghetto, I left my parents, 2 sisters and 1 brother in the Warsaw Ghetto. Until today, I still don't know what happened to them. And I went out with the sister and the young brother. When I came back to the home, after 3 days, I went to the camp. But 2 weeks later, they went to another ghetto called Lodz Ghetto. So I got 1 letter from my sister that they picked up my young brother. He was 12 years old. And at that time, they didn't have the gas chambers yet. They were gassing people on trucks. They were running trucks on wood and put the fumes inside the trucks. And he was taken to a camp named Chelmno. That's the only thing I know what happened to him. The hair, I don't know what happened. So that's the only one I know, my family, what happened. So after 6 weeks, I went back to Poland and went to the house. Survivors were living on the 2nd floor. On the 1st floor was some Polish people lived in our house, but they said nobody from my immediate family came back. The only one that came back was a cousin of mine, and he was 2 years younger than I. But we were separated when Dr. Mengele in Auschwitz told me to go to the left. I was separated from him, and he was with two of his father's brothers. So he is the only one, the one on the right here. This one on the right. His name was Mark Alexander. We had the same last name. So I told me he survived, but he's in a different town. And that time was very bad for survivors. Matter of fact, the Polish people who lived on my first floor asked me if I'm going to stay, they'll move out. I told them, don't bother. Because they killed a lot of survivors. In one town, they killed 42 survivors. In a city named Kielce. So they killed a lot of survivors because when they took the Jews out of the homes, the people moved in. Then some of the survivors came back. They didn't want to give up the home, so they were killing a lot of survivors. So when the Polish people asked me if we were going to stay, I said, no, don't bother. I went and I picked up my cousin, and we went back to Germany. And I lived in Germany for 4 more years, because you couldn't go any place. I didn't have a passport, you know. You had to wait until some country opens up. So after 4 years, Canada said they'll take some people. So I went, I report, then you have to wait until they call you. Took a long time, didn't hear from me. So in the meantime, a friend of mine lived in the next village. He came and said, Joe, you can go to America now. You can register to go to America. You registered, and it took, I think maybe about 2 weeks. And I got a notice. You go get checked out by an American doctor, and then checked by the FBI to check you out. And then I got a note to go, there's a port of Bremenhaven. There's the boat to come to America. I went to Bremenhaven, and I came to America May 30th, 1949. Came to America, we came to New York. Everybody had to have a sponsor. Either he had relatives here or an organization to sponsor you. I didn't have any relatives here, so I was sponsored by a Jewish organization named Joint. And my contract was Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I went to Harrisburg. I got a job in Harrisburg to work for a man. I worked as a tailor. I worked for a man who had a cleaning store in Tuxedo. But this man, his name was Max Kaufman. A father couldn't be better than he was to me. So I was there for about 6 months. And then when the cousin of mine who survived had an uncle here in Santa Monica. So he came in October to Santa Monica and told the uncle that I'm in Pennsylvania. So the uncle called me a few times. I should come here to Santa Monica, to Los Angeles, because we were the only 2 survivors from both of our families. So in January 1950, I came to Los Angeles, and here I am. And before this, I was in 3 camps where I had to witness people being hung. People tried to escape, they got cut, and on Sunday we had to gather around watching being hung. I watched 3 times. So now, if you have any questions for me, I'll be happy to answer.
So we have some questions for.
Yeah, I think I have.
Yeah. So first of all, that was amazing.
show you. There is some, see, shelves. That's the way we live. One section was for 3 people. On the second row here at the end, there's about Elie Wiesel. That's him right here on the end, on the second row. In some of the camps, these were the uniforms we were wearing in some of the camps. Here I have, this is from liberation from Dachau. And I have one here from Auschwitz, and down here you can see there's my tattoo on this one here. And here is one from Munich. On this one here, it shows you here that I was the camp from 1939 to May 2nd, 1945. There's a picture of the cattle cart we were riding in. No, there's a little window on the other side. A little window, that's all. Okay, now I'm ready. Any questions? Okay.
What do you think made you survive when so many other people would give up? What gave you the inner strength to keep going?
So I'd like to repeat the question because there are some
Yeah.
people online.
So what gave you the strength to keep going when other people gave up?
I've been asked that question many times from the high school kids. The high school students asked me because I told them that people gave up their run to the electric ones to get electrocuted. What did you ever think of giving up? I said, no, I never lost hope, I never lost faith, I never stopped believing in God. And I said, today I may have a bad day, but I hope tomorrow will be a better day. But never give up. That's what I tell them. And I get letters, I have thousands of letters from the kids after I talk to them. And then when at first I was talking to the kids, young kids, 15, 16 years old, I figured they play around, they don't pay attention. But when I get the letters, they repeat the words. They say, they'll never forget what I tell them.
Yes.
How many Holocaust survivors are there currently?
How many Holocaust survivors would you say there are currently with us?
We don't know. We don't know. But there are not many. Not many, and at our age, a lot of them passing away. So there's very few left. Also, we lost 6 million Jews, 1.5 million children. They weren't murdered because they were criminals or they did anything wrong, just because they were Jews. And now we have a lot of anti-Semitism going on. And you got some Holocaust denial. And when I talk to the high school students, and I tell them, if you hear any Holocaust deniers, I call them they're crazy. Because the evidence is still in existence today. We've been back to the camps, and you see buses every day. People from all over the world are coming to witness, to see the gas chambers in the oven. So that's why I call those Holocaust deniers, they're crazy. So don't listen what they say.
Mr. Alexander, did you have any personal experience during Kristallnacht, or did you hear about it if you didn't?
No, we didn't have any personal experience, but that was in Germany. But we heard about it. Yes, we knew about it.
Repeating the question was about Kristallnacht.
Yeah, because, yeah, yeah.
Okay, question there.
Not personal, but can I give you a hug?
She wants to give you a hug.
Sure.
That's very, very sweet. Okay, do we have more questions? I see back there.
Yes, you.
So for future generations who not only don't forget, but remember, what would you like us to remember from your story?
What would you like us to remember from your story?
Perspective of my story is the most important thing is my story is to talk to the high school kids. They're our future. It's through education. It's the only way we can prevent from happening the same thing happen again. It's through education. To let kids know what happened. Because I've been talking to the high school kids, that 70% of those kids never heard about the Holocaust.
From your
Dan here, who's on active duty in the Navy. Thank you for your service.
my brothers, from your community originally, from when you were a boy, how many survivors were from that community?
How many survivors were in the community of your...
I was told about 13 was from my town.
How many people
I-
live there?
I lived in a town where it's actually a small town, the population was 6,000, but 25% were Jewish. And today, the town is 3,000 and not one Jew. Because I got a book from the mayor of the city, which tells me that the statistics on the book, but there's not one Jew there now.
Yes.
Yes, sir, my question is, did you see any non-Jewish people that were enslaved by the Nazis?
Did you see any non-Jewish people that were enslaved by the Nazis?
And I saw a few, not too many. At one camp, I think I was, where I saw some Polish people were doing the same slave work what we were doing. That's the only time I saw it.
What did you do when you made it to America?
What did you do when you made it to America?
What did I do? I made it to America. I will tell you first, I worked in Pennsylvania for 6 months, came to Los Angeles, and anybody know where Victorville is?
Yeah.
Victorville was an Air Force base during World War II. In 1946, they closed the base. And in 1950, they reopened the base and the Korean War started. And they mobilized the National Guard, had to go through the base. So I got a tailor shop on the base. And I was there for 7 years with my cousin, actually, we got him. We were there for 7 years, but I was going to Los Angeles every weekend. And then after 7 years, I said, I got enough of the desert. I'm going to Los Angeles. And I'm going to open a store in Los Angeles, which I opened a store on Melrose Avenue, next block from Paramount Studio. A store for military uniforms. We were sent for the Los Angeles Uniform Exchange. And we supplied uniforms for most of the movies and television.
I have a question for you.
So how was your faith affected by the Holocaust?
Faith never affected me. My faith is still the same as it was before, maybe even stronger now.
You must have had feelings of anger and hate. How did you get through that and not carry that through the rest of your life?
The rest of the life, I'll get it through. I don't carry any grudges. Because a grudge is, if you carry a grudge, it makes you sick and it doesn't help anything. So why carry a grudge?